Welcome to the Landscape Chronicles, the podcast dedicated to the businesses and the people driving innovation in the green industry. Join us as we spotlight the companies making an impact and sit down with industry leaders who have transformed their humble beginnings into successful enterprises. Get ready for an inside look at the companies and pioneers shaping the future. Here's the host of the Landscape Chronicles, Stephen Gault.
I've got a couple gentlemen on the pod with us today. We're going to talk robots. We're going to talk about the history of these two gentlemen here and learn about the technology, obviously where technology is moving in the lawn and landscape industry. Robots have become a big player in this game. So today we're joined by Mr. Ross Melbourne. He's the co-founder of Sensory Robotics, and Brad Bush. He's the CEO of Sensory Robotics. We're going to talk innovation in the lawn and landscape space. So thank you for being on the show, gentlemen. Great to be here.
Thanks, Stephen.
Let's dig in. So Ross, I did a bit of research on your background, sir, and it looks like you've been doing the technology thing for quite some time. Can you give us a rundown on kind of where things began and where this fascination with technology and robots started?
Yeah, I think that, my brother and I, David Melbourne, and I started Sensory Robotics, and we had always been building stuff as children. He was always into electronics. At 14 years old, he was wiring up electronics. I was 3 or 4 years younger than him, so I was just kind of amazed at what he was doing. But I was pretty handy at building cases for things, and so we didn't have a lot of money in the families, but we loved all the cool gadgets and things which other people were buying, but we couldn't buy, so we would make things. So we made things like metal detectors, and he would build the electronics. You'd buy the plans and buy the components. And he had a next door neighbor that was an electronics engineer, which was a great mentor to him. Shout out to the mentors out there. And so we built stuff together. I think that he got a rain detector one time for helping my mom know when the laundry was getting wet. So yeah, we grew up making things, and then we both had our own separate kind of careers. I went the software route. He was repairing PCs and other things in his career. He has also invented things like a key finder. Long before there was Apple key finders, he had a Find One, Find All key finder that he patented. He's got multiple patents. I joke with him that he invented the car and the wheel. So as you get a little bit older, you can make jokes like that, and we all think it's funny. But he's got a lot of patents to his name. And so when it came to learning about robots, I had some robot lawnmowers which had a wire in the ground, and he was working with a company called Robin. He built a robot door for them, and he came up with the idea of, couldn't we make that smarter? Those robots are pretty dumb. Couldn't we make them smarter? And so we started working together on how do we make them smarter. I had been dabbling with artificial intelligence since about 2017, when OpenAI actually first came on the market or opened its doors, and it was open source and very few people knew about it. But I started playing with the stuff they had online and started learning how to build neural networks. And in fact, my first kind of foray into neural networks and robotics was to build a self-driving robot car. There was this kind of online community building this thing called a donkey car because it was stubborn and it had a mind of its own. And it would basically follow a track. You put a track down and you trained it on the track, and it would follow that track. And so I built one or two of these and learned how to basically build a self-driving car, obviously a very primitive by today's standards. And I actually won a robot competition with that car. Dallas Robot Club had a competition for all different types of robotics, and I won the competition for that. I wanted to go faster and faster and faster around the track, and basically until it would crash. So I had it going very conservatively at first, and then they just said, "Oh, make it faster." And so we had it going really fast before it would just kind of veer off the track. But anyway, I got my start with robotics that way. Really, is when David and I teamed up that things really got moving. So that kind of led into perhaps we could build a company around making these robot lawnmowers much smarter, and potentially they wouldn't have to stay with the property owner, because then, this is a very expensive robot for one property. what if you could have that one robot that could service multiple properties during a week? And that was the concept. And we kind of took it from there.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating stuff. So I noticed your accent. Are you from England?
Yeah, from England originally. Yeah, just north of London.
Okay. And what brought you here?
I had always had an ambition to come to the States. I had American cousins. I had an uncle that was in the US Air Force, and he was stationed in Suffolk in England, which is kind of the east of the country. My cousins were American. I kind of spent my summers with them. And, I was the youngest of six, three of my boys in my family and three kids in their family. And I was the youngest. And so I looked up to these American cousins and I said, oh, one day I want to go there. And so that's what I did. But David actually beat me over here. He came before I did. And so we have lived in Texas for basically 40 years.
How do you like Texas?
It's great. The people are great. It's a fantastic place to start a business. It's very business friendly, and just the pool of talent, especially in the DFW area. I've always been in software and now in robotics and software. The pool of talent for that is just extraordinarily good. And it doesn't specialize too much in any one thing, but it's always been a great pool of talent. My wife and I started a software business about 20 years ago, and we did really well with that. So yeah, we love this area, and it's nice having sunshine. Having grown up in England with a lot of gray skies, it's nice having the sunshine.
Talk to me a little bit about the software business.
Yeah, so I was a programmer really in England as a mainframe programmer. And when I came to the States, it was also a mainframe programmer. That's how I got a job over here. But I was concerned that the mainframes would be going away one day. So I taught myself how to be a C++ programmer, started building some software. And on my own time, I thought, I could build some software that was kind of a reporting software that generated organization charts for these big companies. And the company I was working for at the time had a large HR mainframe system. And I thought, well, what can I build with this, these skills I'm learning? And so I built this org charting software, which no one had ever seen before. And my wife, who's very entrepreneurial and had always wanted to start her own company. And we had always talked about we starting our own company one day. And so she said, I think I can sell that. And so we, you talked earlier about the day that you kind of gave up your full-time job. I remember being Reno, Nevada in 1995, showing off this software in a big human resource trade show. And we got an overwhelming response from that trade show. And I remember driving away from the hotel that Sunday, Monday morning, and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go in and resign. And that was so those things, those moments really stick with you, don't they, Stephen? When it comes time to make a big, bold change in your life.
It's so great that we were having this discussion before we started recording. Virtually, we did the same thing. And the leap of faith it takes a tremendous amount of courage to go out and do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that I was very fortunate that my wife was very passionate about sales and marketing and business in general. And her big ambition in life was to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Inc. 500, sorry, not Fortune 500, Inc. 500. It was a magazine, still going today, obviously, Inc. magazine. And she grew up, teenage years reading Inc. magazine. And they had this, fastest 500 growing companies in America. And her ambition was to be in that Inc. 500. And so eventually that's what we did. We grew that software business, and she was, in the Inc. 500. That was a proud moment for her, but a proud moment for me as well, because I'd helped her get there.
What a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Ross. Brad Bush, before we dig into Sensory, let's hear about where things began with you.
Absolutely. I had always been a technologist. I actually started as a structural engineer, and that's what my degree is in. Only a few years out of college, I founded my own internet business. Back when you didn't even know what to call a web page. We didn't even know what to call a web page. It was the early 90s. And I built web pages and sold that business before the internet even really took off. In 1999, I sold that business and went to work for a big telecom company. And since then, I've been involved with hardware and software businesses, telecom, Internet of Things. I was involved in a really cool Internet of Things company where we built cattle tags to keep track of where cattle were, and in a hotel technology business where we built Internet of Things and technology for hotel rooms. And then Ross and I got together to do this. So it's been a really fun journey through all different types of hardware and software technology and leadership in all different positions, from sales to operations to now the CEO. And so it's been a great journey, and I've just learned so much. And Ross and I continue to learn every day together.
I couldn't help but notice you were the salutatorian graduate with your MBA from SMU School of Business. Not everybody gets that salutatorian, and not everybody graduates from SMU here in Dallas. So I would imagine you've got some book smarts about you. Talk to me about that experience.
Well, let me just take it back one little step, because one of the things I did want to mention is that I'm a fourth generation structural engineer / general contractor in Texas. So my great grandfather was a builder. My grandfather was a structural engineer. My dad was a builder, and then I was a structural engineer. So I grew up working in the field. So part of being back in the landscaping business is being back in the service business. I've always lived in Texas. I went to school for my undergraduate at Rice. And so getting my graduate degree at SMU was just a natural extension of that, being a Texan. I mean, it's a great 1-2 combination for being a Texan. And I did the executive MBA program, which at the time my employer was so gracious to let me do. And that was every other weekend. I went all day Friday and all day Saturday to class, which isn't easy. I happened to drive with this guy, Joe Mon, who worked for Kodak at the time. And we drove from McKinney all the way down to SMU every Friday and Saturday. We drove back. So we would talk about the classes, and Joe ended up being the valedictorian. I ended up being the salutatorian, which was just kind of fun together.
Is that a bittersweet rivalry? Do you guys talk about that to this day, about the fact that he was the valedictorian?
They actually called it a tie and let us both do a speech, but we were really at 0.02 points away. But it really was never a rival. We were always good friends, and I'm not that competitive to really care. I loved I'm a knowledge junkie, and Ross will tell you this every day. I learn something new and send it to Ross, because I can't keep off the internet learning these things. I can't quit reading books. I read one year during COVID, I read 100 books. This year I'll read about 60. So I can't quit learning things. So being able to be in school was a privilege that I'd forgotten about. And I really, really enjoyed that again. And so I think that was part of the salutatorian. Means nothing to me, but the fact that I could learn all that and be part of that again was really great. And SMU program is wonderful. Tom Perkowski was a leader. He's since retired, but what they created there, and it's still, SMU is a top 20 business school. People didn't know that. And it's fluctuated between, top 5 to top 20 throughout the last 10 years. And so it's really a great business school. And that executive MBA program is one of the top in the country. So I'm really proud of that degree. And Texas and Dallas should be proud of SMU for that reason too.
It certainly is something to be proud of. Having lived here and seeing the graduates that have come out of SMU, that's a tremendous achievement. I did want to ask you, Brad, about Carnegie Technologies. Tell me a little bit more about your experience with Carnegie.
Carnegie was founded by a great friend of mine, Paul Posner, who I'd built a telecom network for when he ran his own cellular company. Paul was super successful as an entrepreneur and sold that business. He started this other technology business, which was a conglomeration of ideas. He was a lot like Ross. He was a guy that came up with cool ideas, and he hired people to do that. He had a small satellite business in that technology business, and he had an Internet of Things business within that business, which I ran. And that Internet of Things business used the technology that used very short range radio waves to connect things. One of the main products was, like I said, a cattle tag, which was really cool. So it was the exact shape of a normal cattle tag that they would put on their ears. Ranchers could keep track of where their cows were. And if a cow got out, it had a virtual fence. And if a cow got out, it would alert the rancher. A single cow could be worth a couple $1,000s. So these are real assets. So they were making sure that they were keeping track on their assets on these tens of thousands of acre ranches. So the cows could be anywhere. And so it was a really interesting way of building a technology and learning how to build software hardware business and what the pluses and minuses of the trade-off decisions are in hardware and software. And I brought some of that to this business with Ross, because I think people say it for a reason, but hardware is hard. Building robotics, building any kind of hardware and putting a software solution on it is hard. Whether you're taking it to market to consumers or, as we are, to businesses, it just creates a whole layer of problems. to have a hardware involved. There's lots of startups that start software businesses, and I commend them. But when you put hardware on it, it really it makes it probably 10 times harder.
Brad, thank you very much. Ross, talk to me about how you and Brad got hooked up.
Brad has helped me and my brother back in 2016. My brother was looking for work and he was obviously a gifted engineer, but didn't have a 4-year degree. And so I was basically helping him kind of network. I met Brad through a friend, and he was working at Dialexa. He invited us both to come down and look at Dialexa, and Dialexa was also kind of incubating the company, a few companies, and one was Robin, and they were looking for somebody to build a robot door. We introduced David to them, and they hired him on as a contract initially to build a robot door. And so that was how we first met. And then later on, I think it was my wife, actually, Lois Melbourne, a friend of hers was looking for somebody senior and technical that could really drive their business and solve a lot of problems for them. And so, yeah, we immediately thought of Brad. And so we introduced Brad to that company, and he did tremendously well for them. And yeah, so it's kind of been a very interesting dynamic where we've known each other for 8 years and helping each other, through networking, really. And so when Lois found out he was on the market, she said, well, if you really want to take Sensory to the marketplace and grow it, and Brad would be an excellent person to run the company. And so that's what we did. We hired Brad, and I think that we're just entering a time when the robots are ready to go, and we're introducing them to landscapers, and the response has been just very exciting. They're very keen to see what we have, and we've been demoing the robots really well. And so, yeah, it's exciting times right now.
Brad, any color to add to how you two came together?
Things come to you at the right time. And Ross and mine's relationship is a true example of that. Like Ross said, it's been an interwoven network of helping each other through the careers. I wouldn't be where I am without Lois's help originally, like Ross said. But then, where Ross and David had this great prototype built, and it was a working prototype, and the robot was Mow and Want. But to take that prototype to where we are today is, from a business perspective, takes a lot of steps that people don't really get to see. You have to set up payroll. You have to do marketing. You have to pick a logo. You have to build a website. There's so many small little steps, as you know, Stephen, to starting a business. We're a software business that happens to have robots underneath it. I met with Ross. It was January of 2023. I met with Ross, and I'm like, this is going to be something big, and I wanted to get in. And it's just been so much fun together to grow this business and figure out where the industry is heading and try and meet the industry where it's going to be, which is always the hardest part about a young company.
I'd like to talk with you gentlemen about Sensory. Clearly, that's one of the reasons that we're here. When did you make the connection that what it is that you were doing could be beneficial to the lawn care industry?
Well, I think it was actually David's idea to perhaps we could introduce this new technology. It's called GPS RTK, which had been used for about almost a decade in agriculture for farmers for their tractors to steer themselves in a straight line around a field. And he said, well, yeah, I think we could make one of these robots that needs a wire in the ground. I think we could not have the wire in the ground, but make it think like it's approaching the wire. And so I said, yeah, I'll buy you the hardware. It's like $500 of electronics, and we'll see if we play with it and see if we get work. Well, it was very challenging to make that stuff, just figure out how it works. Very badly documented, typical early stage. It reminds me of the DOS days of, programming PCs. You had to really know the DOS commands. So we got that working, and I wrote some software that showed that we could, with precise positioning, we could actually do striping on the grass. And so then it really a case of let's build a prototype. And so that's what we did. We built prototypes. And I should have started with, I started with mentioning artificial intelligence, and that really my kind of passion is that I see that the world doesn't have it doesn't have all the robots that science fiction told us it would have. And I wanted to know, why don't we have all these robots? And really, when AI came along, and I understood how really what it was doing behind the scenes, I realized that it is the enabler for robotics. And if you combine robots with AI, then robots could do almost anything. So I thought, how do I get a start in this? And so when he came up with this idea, I thought, well, this is where we could use this positioning technology with artificial intelligence, and we could build a software and hardware system to solve a problem that we were seeing in the landscape industry, which was a shortage of labor. As I'm sure you're well aware, Stephen, I'm preaching to the choir here that shortage of labor. If you could build robots that could augment your labor, and you could grow your business, you could keep your customers, and perhaps even you'd be quieter. So all these things went into, okay, let's move forward and build a prototype, and then see where it went. And that's really what led us to kind of meeting Brad, and then trying to put a real framework around the business.
You mentioned earlier RTK. What exactly does that mean?
RTK is an acronym. It really means corrected GPS. So the GPS we have on our phones and in our cars is accurate to plus or minus 30 feet. That is not good enough for, doing landscape mowing, because it wouldn't be accurate enough. But the RTK technology is basically an add-on to GPS, which really makes it a lot more accurate. And it is down to about an inch of accuracy. You can make the robot very accurate. The caveat with it is it has to see the sky. So it has to be able to see all several of the satellites, the GPS satellites. And it's not just the American GPS system. It's also other nations' constellation of satellites it's seeing. But fundamentally, the corrections come from a base station that is either locally mounted or it's mounted within 10 miles. And that base station is saying, okay, I know my exact position on the Earth. The satellites are telling me something that's not exact. But from that, I can calculate an offset, a correction, if you will. And I can then send this correction out to a fleet of robots. And that's really how it's working to correct the GPS RTK.
Okay. Because I've seen that everybody's kind of moving away from the guide wire systems or the boundary wires. And a lot of these units, particularly there's going to be more on display next week at Equip out in Louisville. I'm seeing these RTK units. And so that's essentially what it is. Opposed to being a boundary wire, it's just a GPS controlled machine. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a corrected form of GPS, or an accurate form of GPS.
And you mentioned that the accuracy is getting better as time goes by, as far as being able to be accurate up to 1 inch.
Our system on our Sensory Robotics system is accurate to an inch. And the caveat is that if you get close to a building or under a very dense tree or a bush or something, it obscures the view of the satellites in the sky. And so the accuracy can go down to 2 or 3 feet. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, you've got to avoid robots, destroying, flower beds and things. So, so that's where if you can combine the RTK technology with additional technology like artificial intelligence and vision, then you can basically mow anywhere you want to.
Maybe I'm getting too technical here, but do you think that it does require both of those technologies, the GPS, RTK, and the vision, to make these units achieve 99% accuracy?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, because the RTK is available and inexpensive, it's another sensory input to a robot. And why would you not use it? It's a little bit like saying, I think I can just find my way around like this building by clicking and listening to the clicks coming back. It's like, we got a pair of eyes, just open the eyes. It's just another set of sensors that you want to use. And but knowing when to have confidence in the RTK system and when to have confidence in the AI system, that's where the balance comes in.
Sounds to me like you've alluded to the fact that the biggest challenge is the accuracy of the unit. Is that the biggest thing that you guys are kind of working on right now, is just dialing in the accuracy of the unit, or what are you seeing there?
Really, the thing that we're doing is we're solving a much bigger problem in the landscape industry, and that is, where are the tools that can really help augment the labor on a crew, for instance? Where are those tools where a landscaper can reduce their crew size from, say, 3 people down to 2 people? And instead of having a guy pushing a mower or riding on a mower, the 2 guys can just deploy a team, in our case, a team of mowers, which are, small enough to fit on their truck or their trailer, and automatically go out and mow that grass. And the more you put in, the more robots you put down on the grass, the faster it gets done. That's an innovation which, sounds fantastic today, but this is a system we have today that we're starting to deploy to landscapers.
I did have Brad come out and provide a demo to our company EcoMo here in Dallas. Very impressed with the product. So Brad, if you can kind of walk me through what that looks like from a setup standpoint. If I'm a landscaper, as Ross had mentioned earlier, the idea behind this technology is to reduce the crew, or maybe crew members can be redirected to other jobs and these robots can perform tasks. What does it look like from your standpoint whenever you take a unit and you bring a unit to a house or a property? How does the programming work and how long does that typically take?
Awesome. That's a great question. The programming of the robots is a one-time setup that you only have to do at each property. And you bring the robot to the property and you set one robot down and you use an Xbox joystick to drive the robot around the perimeter of the property just one time. And then you have to go around large areas that you don't want the robot to mow, and we call those keep out zones. And the robot then won't go into areas that you don't want it to go into. And then once you've done that, the greatest part of our system is it saves that to the cloud. And no matter which robot you bring to the site in the future, it will pull that site's information from the cloud and know, okay, I'm a robot, I'm at this site, here's the definition of that site. The operator, the guy in the field, just has to press play on his phone and the robot will mow that site, either one robot or multiple robots, as Ross was talking about. So what we tried to do is make it a quick and easy setup, but more importantly, make it really easy for that crew member to run the robots in the field in an easy way that's really close to his normal job and not getting way out of his comfort zone. So what we see other robot companies doing is that they are trying to build a consumer type model where a single robot sits on a single site. We think that's very capital intensive, but we also think it's a really hard service problem where if a robot is down, you've got to make a truck roll to that property. Whereas if a robot goes down in a Sensory team, you can actually pick up a robot. We expect our teams to have an additional extra robot. And in case a robot goes down, they'll just replace that robot that's had a problem. Maybe it ran out of batteries with the robot, their extra robot, and then they just keep mowing that site without having to stop. So that's the advantage, is that our robots are interchangeable. They mow as a team. They work more as a tool. And so landscapers can deploy them like they're deploying their current systems today. And they don't have to get out of their operational mindset. And that's really one of the things that we were really trying to do when we brought it.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the important talking points, particularly with the robots, is I'll just come out and say it. I mean, we're traditionally a blue collar industry, and there is a fear in the lawn and landscape industry that, and you'll see it on social media. So, I mean, it's not like this is a big surprise. People are concerned or worried about robots coming in and taking their jobs. Ross, what is your perspective on that? Because it's clearly a talked about thing out there in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's normal human nature, and I think that the truth is that robots are not going to replace their jobs. Their jobs are going to become more interesting. I think that robots will actually end up making them get paid more. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I think they'll end up having higher wages. And the reason I say that is because robots really, all the landscapers we've talked to, they're looking at robots as a growth strategy. And if you can grow your business and you can reduce your crew sizes, by reducing your crew sizes, effectively, you can have more crews, so you can get to more customers. And so you can grow your business. So in the fact of growing your business, you can improve your efficiency and you can actually increase your wages. You might even end up having to you get the opportunity potentially to charge your customers more when they demand quiet mowing that's silent. You deploy these mowers and they can be on a call, on Zoom call like this, and the mowers are outside, they can't hear them. And so there may actually be, like I call the Starbucks effect, where coffee went from 10 cents or 50 cents to $2, and now it's a lot more than that. There may be some upside for robotics around that people don't talk about much. But no, I definitely think that the labor shortages in the landscaping industry can only be solved through robotics right now. I don't think there's going to be a solution coming that other than robotics, and I think it will help people's wages go up and their jobs will become less monotonous and more interesting.
I absolutely agree. I think if anything, it's going to create additional opportunities for folks to learn new skills, different skills, and in the end, do more. You're absolutely right. The labor shortage it's a big issue, particularly here in Texas. So what you guys are bringing to the market is a tremendous benefit to what folks like ourselves are out there doing. So Brad, whenever you go to a meeting, you bring a unit out, how long does it typically take somebody to set up?
We mapped a half-acre property in around 10 minutes the other day. So it's really short to set up a single property. And again, that's one time to set it up. And then to start mowing, it's a matter of a minute. Really, you set the mowers out, press the button, and they all start going. That's my favorite part, when the mowers start going, because it looks like a robot circus almost. The software is very intelligent. So the software allows you to mow it exactly straight stripes. So if let's say we put 5 mowers out on that half-acre property, each section of that 5 acres of the stripes will get a mower, and the mowers will all start in a line. And so they all start at one side of their section, and they're all mowing the same direction. So it looks like a symphony, and they all mow the same direction. And so they are mowing down stripes the same direction, and they all get done at roughly the same time. So as you add more mowers to a site, as Ross said, the time would go down. And so our goal is to get the time on a site to roughly match the time that a crew would be on to do the edging and the trimming and all the other high value activities that the crew would be at the site doing. So that's the key. So we want to match those 2 times. So we're trying to get the robot's software to say, okay, you should put down X number of mowers at this site to match your crew size. These are the kind of intelligent decisions that we're working towards the software. As we start to understand landscapers more and more, we want to work the way landscapers work. And that's the real key to robotics taking off in the industry, is to work more and more like landscapers work.
The other thing I'll add is, that's a great description for Brad. We're also working on our recording system. We can ask by the landscapers that we're working with, could we get a weekly report of how much work the robots have done? Because that can help them with their billing, especially in large HOAs, for instance. So so the automating mowing of grass can also have other benefits, including how to bill your customers and knowing how much work that your crews are doing. The other thing is we didn't mention is that very easily the operator can change the direction of the striping very quickly. So that if you decide that you want to stripe at a different angle that day, we can just adjust the striping. The operator on the ground cannot change the striping dynamically.
So I can just go into my app and just choose, okay, this week I want to change my stripe pattern to a northeast direction.
Yeah, and it shows you the map, like a satellite image, and actually that shows you a simulation of what the striping would look like.
Okay.
And on the app, as the team is mowing, you'll see the mowers going down their little stripes on the app. Let's say we had 5 mowers. You'll see all 5 mowers going down their stripes, and you can see them slowly making their way to the end. It's pretty neat.
Your biggest customers and the folks that have the most interest in Sensory, are they the commercial side, or is it the residential side? Or from a property perspective, what are you guys seeing the most interest from?
It's actually a great question. We have a certain target market, which is the larger residential and up to the medium-sized commercial landscapers. And that is exactly who we're seeing interest from. What's great is that what I would consider the medium-sized commercial, have probably been the ones that have been the most interested in the technology solution because what they see is even in their residential customers. So many of those larger commercial landscapers are mowing big HOAs, and where it's one house after another in a residential type setting. And our mowers do great in that setting because you can program the mower to do one front lawn and a path, and then another front lawn and then a path, and then another front lawn and a path, and get an entire street done without having to come back and touch the mower, which is that one feature alone they really get excited about, because these HOAs are hard on their crews because the crews don't get a break. They don't get to travel in between properties. They mow all day, 5 days a week, no break times. And so it tends to wear the crews down. And so getting the chance to get some robotic mowing done on some of this really tedious work is very exciting to them.
And what are you doing, Brad, to raise brand awareness out there to make companies like ours more aware of you guys and who you are and what you're out there doing?
Really, it's direct sales to individual landscapers. I've spent the last couple of months talking to landscapers, meeting with landscapers, demoing the product directly here in the Dallas market. We want to go to market early on in the Dallas market so that we can learn what works and what doesn't work, how landscapers view the product, do a lot of ride-alongs, and that's what we've started doing. Because what we want to know is what works, what doesn't work, and be able to, if a landscaper has a problem, be there immediately. And that really is a long-term vision for the company, is to be able to be a service value partner for our customers, because we realize this industry has relied for decades on the dealer network, and robotics is somewhat making that dealer network difficult because the dealer network is not a technological support network. And many companies have tried to rely on them to be that, and that is breaking down. And so what we're trying to figure out is how do we go direct to market and have a large enough support? We'd rather go, I guess the way that I would say it is we'd rather grow slower and be able to technologically support our customers over the long haul. And that's the end vision. And that's why we're starting in Dallas and trying to make sure that we can support our customers well and learn from that experience and build the company the right way to be able to long haul support those customers.
And Ross, where do you see the biggest opportunity for the industry?
Like I mentioned earlier, the biggest opportunity is augmenting, maximizing the potential of your existing labor. If you can maximize your existing labor force within a landscaper, then you can grow your business, you can make more money, and you can increase your profits. So I really think that is the greatest opportunity our customers have around robots.
And as far as people that are interested in Sensory and just battery electric powered tools in general, how much do you think that your contribution to sustainable lawn care practices contributes to the success of the robot industry?
I think that there is a trend in the industry of, especially around the bigger companies, knowing that big changes could be coming in the way that the governments, local governments, state governments, and federal governments might treat a gas-powered equipment. We don't know yet exactly when that will come. I think most people expect it at some point. But I think that just there's benefit to the environment of using electric equipment. I also think that the thing that people don't realize about electric equipment yet is just quieter, especially robot mowers. People don't have to put up with noise pollution. I think there's some things in life that you just put up with because what else can you do? And I think in neighborhoods especially, people put up with noise pollution on the weekends. No one really likes it, but then they know that Joe across the road, he can only mow his grass the weekend, so he's got to use a gas-powered mower. I think the time will come when people will say, no, I want a quiet neighborhood. And so electric equipment and robotics will really have it'll be an impetus to move to electric equipment. And if you're going to, as a landscaper, you're going to move to electric equipment and go to that expense, why not consider robots? Because they're electric. All these things are happening, and time will tell when the kind of incentives come along to really help landscapers make that transition. I'm hoping there's a lot of incentives to help the transition. Kind of like I've had electric cars for 10 years, and there's been tax incentives to move to electric cars. And that may well happen in the landscape industry.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. Everybody's very happy with the fact that we're using electric equipment from an environmental standpoint. They love us more because of the reduced noise pollution. I couldn't help but notice the Concorde behind you. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I wanted to, then I had it on a stand that's very large. I'm like, okay, what the hell am I going to do with this? And like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mount it on the wall. So it's actually on basically the TV stand back there. It's mounted to the wall. Yeah, Concorde, supersonic jet. They call it the SST.
So, Ross, wasn't there a moment in time where you had let most of the astronauts that were living or close to it, many of them?
The Apollo astronauts, yeah, I've met two of the Apollo astronauts. Three of the Apollo astronauts have walked on the moon. I've met them. I met two of the Apollo astronauts from Apollo 13, Jim Lovell and Fred Hayes. I think it was Fred Hayes. I really was inspired, 7 years old when they landed on the moon. And I think that that's really inspirational for young children and to see rocket launches and see new technology happening and like, wow, I want to do that. To that end, on Monday, Brad has organized one of our landscaper friends to bring their son over that's interested in robots to see our robots running and to see how we build them and run them. So yeah, we're trying to do some outreach as well.
You're a fascinating guy. So what are you doing, Ross, when you're not thinking about building robots in your techno guru world? What are you doing on your free time?
My wife and I like to travel. We're big Formula One fans. I introduced her to Formula One over a decade ago. We go down to Austin to watch the races, and we've been to several races around the world. So we do like to travel. She's probably a bigger fan than I am, knows more about it than I do. I love the technology of Formula One. So we spend time doing that. And then we visit family and friends traveling, and we travel with family and friends to different places. So I would say probably travel. And then I also like to play a game called squash. It's like a little bit like racquetball. And then also pickleball. Pickleball is very popular. I love almost any racket sport. And pickleball is the easiest to kind of get a game, if you will. So squash and pickleball is my kind of hobbies in the past times.
My dad grew up playing squash, as I'd mentioned probably before we started recording. They're from Northern Ireland, and that's pretty popular over there. Of course, pickleball has taken off around here. Everybody's seen the pickleball courts are all booked up here in Dallas. So good luck finding one. Ross, before we wrap this thing up, I'll let you guys get on with your Saturday. Any closing thoughts, anything that I've left out, talking points, and anything else you'd just like to share?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's probably the hardest thing for landscapers to try and figure out today is that when they think of robots, they may have seen a lot of these what I call consumer robots. Businesses are selling them to consumers to put into their yards. Initially, these things, they work and they can work well initially. I think the thing that is hard for them there's not maybe many examples of robots that are really designed for the landscaper themselves. So when they think of robots, they might be thinking of these consumer robots to stay behind, and then they might see that as competition. In my personal opinion, having had 6 or 7 of these consumer robots from different manufacturers, even the very best ones on the market today, they will take you once or twice a month, sometimes more, to go out there and either put it back on its base or tinker with it, to do something with it. And so it's not for every homeowner. And I don't think it's for many landscapers either, because you'd have to roll a truck to fix those constantly. What we're trying to do is very different from those consumer robots, is what I'm saying. We're really building tools for the landscaper and want to partner with landscapers to help them augment their crews and to help them grow their business. So it's a very different play from the consumer robot kind of method or strategy, if you will.
Brad, how does everybody get a hold of Sensory and reach out to you guys to make that connection?
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is to visit our website, sensoryrobotics.com. It's got the telephone number, the emails to reach out. You can also just email info@sensoryrobotics.com if you have questions or comments. We'd love to talk to landscapers, especially in the DFW area, if you want to trial and or buy the robots. So we're selling the robots today. So we're really excited about where we are and where we're heading. And thank you so much, Stephen, for having us on.
Fascinating story. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing all of that. I know Ross had probably dug into some background history that you haven't shared about yourself in years. And it's great to hear those stories. You guys have got a great product. You've been doing a lot of things good. And Brad, I appreciate you coming out to provide the demo to our company. It was an exciting experience. The knowledge that you gentlemen have shared today and the insight have just been incredibly valuable. It's helped to provide me with a better understanding of kind of where the industry is now and your vision of where the industry is headed. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks for listening to The Landscape Chronicles, where we take you inside the lives of those who shape the lawn and landscape industry. Don't miss the next episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review.